I'm Sean Statzer, and you're tuned in to Stats Don't Lie, where I try to cut through the noise with fact-driven reflections on debates that divide us. As we wrestle with truth, faith, and fractures in our culture, I'm not here to tell you what to think, but to invite you to think deeper. Let's get into it. August 31st, 2025. The freedom to be lonely. We live in a culture today that celebrates independence, but I've learned the hard way that independence and isolation can coexist in unhealthy ways. I spent a decade in prison, and during that time I found the most authentic Christian community I've ever experienced, one forged in chaos, diversity, and desperation. Ironically, 8 years into my life of freedom, I sometimes feel lonelier than I did behind those walls. And this is about that paradox. It's about what community means, how easily it fractures, and why the gospel ties love and connection together at the deepest levels. The person who loves the dream of community will destroy community, but the person who loves those around them will create community. I first read those words from Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Life Together in my mid-20s. I was serving a 10-year sentence and just beginning to lead and mentor many broken men in a very broken place. I wanted to be like him, wise beyond his years, overflowing with love, unwavering in the struggle against injustice. His vision of self-sacrificial love was one voice among many that spoke to me through the pages of the books that I devour. Their words filled the stale air of my cell and my heart with divine wisdom that the church seems to have largely forgotten. But there in that wretched place, I was blessed to taste real community. Strange now, the years into my life of freedom, I find myself more isolated than ever, craving the very spiritual connections I once had in prison. We were created for community, and without it, we're incomplete. Out of my decade of incarceration, 4.5 years were spent at Northeast Correctional Complex in Mountain City, Tennessee. I visited there again last night, something I've been doing for a little while now, returning to the ministry where I once served as associate pastor as an inmate, Zion Hill. It's always surreal going back. Many of the same men are still there, men I knew well who became family to me. I stood in that same room week after week, teaching, preaching, worshiping, and taking part in a movement that made a real impact on everyone it touched. It was the most raw and real Christian experience I have ever had. And last night, after I shared a bit, Eddie Sawyer got up to preach. He was the pastor I served under when I was inside. He's probably the most consistently faithful man of God I have ever known. And as I listened, nostalgia hit me hard. Hearing his prophetic voice deliver manna from heaven for my starving soul. It just hits different within those walls than it does anywhere else. I glanced down at my Bible, the same Bible I carried during my time there. The same one I preached from, wept over, consulted, and studied. The one I've walked away from and stumbled back to ever since. Inside that Bible was a piece of paper I remembered well. An old prayer request sheet from one of our Bible study nights. A paper with hardly any space left to write on it, filled with glimpses into the pain and brokenness of men whom society despised. It was an intense part of my journey. The prison itself was in turmoil at that time. The state of Tennessee had just appointed a new commissioner over the Department of Corrections, and he wasted no time in shaking things up. A barrage of major policies changed overnight. Mass transfers shuffled men all over the state at random, uprooting many who had spent years working to get there to be close to their families. And as movement restrictions tightened on the inmate population and more constructive outlets were taken away, violence rapidly surged across the state. In the midst of all of that, though, Zion Hill exploded. Our ministry team was stacked with men from every race, gang affiliation, age bracket, walk of life, all full of love for one another despite having nothing in common but their current residence and their love for Christ. Our weekly services became packed. Even the Wednesday night Bible study grew from only being 3 or 4 people for years to 50 or 60 crammed into a hot classroom with floor-to-ceiling windows that the sun beamed into that time of day. The stank of body odor was only overshadowed by the thickness of the spirit in that place. But everyone gladly endured it because there was real discipleship happening there. I saw violent gang members drop their flags, enemies reconcile, men set free from addictions. Many men tithed hygiene and other essential commissary items bought with their meager prison wages so that the church could provide for anyone in need, no questions asked. And as tensions rose across the compound, our little community became a force for peace. It was something only God could create, united in diversity. A motley crew of society's boogeyman doing kingdom work from inside a cage. The purest spiritual community I've ever known, and it still survives to this day. My wife joined me the first time that I went back in after I got out. I'll never forget how absolutely terrified she was going in. But after spending a few hours in a room with over 100 prisoners, many of which were never coming home, she couldn't contain her shock and amazement on the drive home as she told me how she had just been treated with more respect and felt more protected than she had ever felt around any group of men in her entire life. The community in this place is a microcosm of what the church is meant to be in the world. It's not good that man should be alone. This is often attributed to marriage, but it's not just about that. We were made for connection. Gangs are a manifestation of this. Men standing together to survive in a hostile environment. But the same impulse drives every club, every church small group, recovery meeting, book club, political rally, sports team, and every online echo chamber. Regardless, though, of how it manifests in our lives, it's only in the gospel that we find what our restless hearts are truly seeking. This is because love is the driving force of the gospel. But what is love if it isn't shared? What good is love if it never flows from me and reaches someone else? God created and redeemed us to participate in his love. It is what draws us to him and to each other. To live cut off from community is to live against our very design. And that hunger for connection can drive us towards many dark things if we pursue them without love. I'm 8 years out of prison now, and it has been quite a journey. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of meaningful ministry work, activist work. I've married a beautiful woman. I've become a present father to my daughter who was born in the first 3 months of my incarceration, and I've had a good career along the way. I can't call myself a failure by any means, but at the same time, my heart is so restless because I know I'm not walking in my purpose, and the burden of that knowledge is crushing. But what can I say? Life's buried me under work, bills, stress, responsibilities. I've made more money than ever the last few years, but it's consumed all my time and energy for far too long. In addition to that, Gaza has fractured my spiritual community in ways I never thought possible. Because of twisted theology and a worldview shaped by American mythology, things I once could agree to disagree about have formed a chasm between myself and the great majority of my spiritual community. Theological differences that once seemed like secondary issues are now enabling horrors that are broadcast live to the world. And in my attempts to help my brothers and sisters see it for what it is, I've pushed many of them away. Speaking out on this has meant standing up against people I love, cherish, and once leaned on. Advocacy has left me disconnected from other believers in ways I have never experienced before. And I need you to understand, when I was in prison, I saw things that scarred me. I saw horrific scenes of savage violence that I can still see in vivid detail, sometimes even happening to people I knew and cared about. Over time, I started to grow numb to it as a defense mechanism for my own sanity. And even that led to great internal conflict as I approached my return to the free world because I couldn't help but wonder if my conscience would return, and I was still trying to understand how I lost any sense of it in the first place. But nothing I saw in there compares to the daily images coming out of Gaza for the last 2 years. Emaciated children, murdered journalists, grieving families. Every day I see more and more hell on earth. I see Judaism and Christianity being weaponized to advance empires of greedy men instead of the kingdom of heaven. And to have my own mentors, who I've always revered for being the most loving and selfless people I know, to have them listen to every moral, legal, and scriptural argument I present to them while pleading with them to reconsider their unconditional support for the modern state of Israel, and to have them dismiss it all with, unfortunately, war is ugly, but this is all God's will for his people. That broke something in me. How can I tell Bisan, whose cheerful countenance has lost all hope, or precious little Hen Rajab, who is calling for help, or the thousands of starving, traumatized adolescent amputees with no living relatives left, that war is ugly, but this is God's will? Now, I don't say this is a woe is me type story. My frustrations are small compared to the suffering of those I stand in solidarity with, but the toll it's taken on my heart has been deep, and it's only pushed me further into my current state of isolation. Looking back, I can see how much loss of community has shaped me. At the age of 20, my whole world vanished in one night. Every relationship I'd ever known became a distant memory. Then I spent the next decade living in what might as well have been a different universe. And while there, I forged many deep bonds. I lived a whole different lifetime, only for that reality to be ripped away in an instant as well. And then coming home, that's its own battle. One of the hardest parts relationally is to assimilate back into your own household. Life is simply carried on without you. Everyone's settled into their roles at home, and reinserting yourself after so long can bring challenges you never saw coming. Being part of something as intense as my journey through prison and having it all suddenly end and being dropped back into a life that feels foreign, it can leave scars you can't explain and throw obstacles your way that you never expected. 8 years into my life after prison, I still struggle to maintain consistent friendships. Some of that's on me, but much of it can be attributed to the hustle of everyday life. I've also struggled to maintain a spiritual kinship with many who have always been pillars in my spiritual community. This has a lot to do with the direction my ministry is taking, challenging the theology behind Christian Zionism and Christian nationalism. I don't regret at all my activism on behalf of Palestinians. And anything I experience as a result is a small inconvenience compared to the oppression they're experiencing. But it has contributed to a level of spiritual disconnectedness I've never known since I started pursuing Christ. And lately, I've been feeling the effects. It's been really weighing on my heart. I know I need connection again. I know I need to be a part of a body of believers, and I need community and relationships beyond my clients and industry peers. And this is why, when I returned to the prison last night, it was a conscious attempt to reconnect and quiet my soul. As I sat there listening to Eddie, holding that old prayer request form like a holy relic, my eyes turned to the blank pages at the beginning of my Bible. Only mine aren't blank. They're covered with profound quotes I heard or read while I was incarcerated there. And as I turned to them, one immediately stood out to me. The less you're involved in other people's lives, the worse things are in your own. A former mentor of mine spoke that in a sermon here many years ago. And in that moment, it hit me again like it did the first time I heard it, on a prophetic level. Not prophecy like predicting the future, but an illumination of the present. It shined a light on my current state, that isolation has been eating away at me, and that I've let it happen. Another wise man I had the privilege of knowing in my time there once told me, when a banana separates itself from the bunch, it's finna get peeled. I guess it's no wonder that it feels like life's been peeling my wig back lately. In the 1970s, researchers put rats into two environments. One group in isolated cages, the other in a kind of utopia that they dubbed Rat Park. It was complete with toys, space to move about, and most importantly, other rats. Both groups were given access to drug-laced water and regular clean water. The rats in isolation overdosed and died. The rats living in community, they rarely touched the drugs. Instead, they thrived together despite the easy access to such a euphoric poison. The conclusion was simple but profound. The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. Without loving community, we'll eventually destroy ourselves. With it, we flourish. In the gospel, we discover the deepest connection of all, the love of God binding us to Himself and to one another. So never make the mistake of thinking that your adherence to religious tradition is more important than your relationships with those around you. For if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. We need God, and we need each other. I love you all. Stay stirred up. You've been listening to Stats Don't Lie, fact-driven reflections on debates that divide us. And if you'd like to hear more, subscribe to my Substack at stats.substack.com, where every essay lives in both written and audio form. And if you'd like to support this work, you can pledge to do so there as well. Until next time, stay stirred up.